ancient robots and ancient advanced technology. I remember I was sitting in the Canadian Embassy here in Athens a couple of years back. I wanted to get some papers because I'm also Canadian. Yes, I am. And I was waiting there to be called, and I was looking at a magazine, and I was reading an article on this ancient Greek robot that was dressed like a woman. She even had a wrap on around her body, very nicely looking, almost like one of the Vestal Virgins of the Parthenon of the Acropolis of Athens. You know how they were dressed with that flowing gown? And she was a robot that was able to pour you would place a cup in her hand, and with the other hand, she was holding a jug, and she would fill it with wine and water. And when it was filled to a certain level, she would stop pouring. And then you would remove the cup from her hand. And this was a robot in ancient Greece. And they have it in one of the museums here of ancient Greek technology. But there's also the legend of a very huge robot that used to fly in the sky. His name was Talos, and he was the protector of the island of Crete. You know, the Minoans, the ancient Minoans are supposedly Atlanteans. And many times we've found and read that even in the Old Testament, in the Holy Bible, it states that the Philistine giants, the giants that were, of course, of the tribe of Goliath, who David did away with. Yes, Goliath, the Philistines of Israel, of ancient Israel, were of the island of Crete, and they were giants. And they were also rumored to be Atlanteans. But let's go into this wonderful article by Xavier Séguin of Eden Saga concerning the ancient technology and ancient robots. He says, many times I come back to one of the main scams that the Western education distills in the dear blonde heads of our little children. No, we were not born in Greece. No, the Greeks are not the inventors of Western civilization. The truth is that they had access to much older knowledge, which they exploited as they could. Badly, most often. The researcher Ludmila Zachno sent me this information, which is my delight of the day. This is a book by American researcher and folklorist Adrienne Mayer. She marveled that the Greeks would have predicted heaps of modern inventions. Oh, little geniuses, how clever they are. Just have a look. Ancient Greeks not only created the foundations of modern civilization, but they also predicted future technological innovations, according to a new book. Stanford University historian Dr. Adrienne Mayer, in the upcoming book Gods and Robots, that's the title of her book, Gods and Robots, argues that Greek mythology prefigured artificial intelligence, robots, driverless cars, and other modern technologies. You want me to say that again? She says that the Greek myth prefigured artificial intelligence, robots, driverless cars, and other modern technologies. Dr. Mayer's arguments revolve to a large extent around Hephaestus. He was a god of fire, like he was a blacksmith, let's put it that way, the god of craftsmen and metalworking. One of his creations was Talos, a giant robot, an autonomous robot made of bronze, who Mayer describes as a bronze killer robot. Yes, he was a killer robot because he was out to protect the residents of the island of Crete. Yes, he was a bronze killer robot and an early precursor to the kinds of androids now being built by Boston Dynamics. Another of his creations was Pandora, a replicant and wicked AI female robot, a fembot, who, according to Mayer, was programmed to release evil into the world. Okay, Pandora's box. Remember Pandora and her box? And she closed it just before the last thing came out, which was hope. Now, Pandora was not the only AI Hephaestus constructed, since he also built mechanical golden maidens to help him with his work. These were designed to predict his needs and to act on them without direct instruction, something which Dr. Mayer believes makes them early versions of such AI-powered personal assistants as Amazon's Alexa. And neither were these creations the only ancient Greek prophecies of future technology. According to Dr. Mayer, Homeric's epic poetry foretells the arrival of driverless cars and transportation. In the Odyssey, Ulysses sails back to Ithaca on pilotless Phoenician ships, while in the Iliad, Homer writes about autonomous wheeled tripods that transport ambrosia. Now, those who have been reading me for some time, he says here, are already laughing. The others will soon imitate them. It's obviously not about prophecies. This folklorist should not have read, and that's a pity, the incendiary articles I devoted to the subject. Plato and the cave, Plato and the Logos, Plato and the intelligibles, Pythagoras and his theorem, Pythagoras and his teacher, Homer the forger, and others I recommend to you warmly. We have based our culture and our knowledge on the ignorance and naivety of the Greeks, certainly less enlightening than their contemporary Celts and Egyptians, by whom the wealthy Greeks sent their children to study and make future elites. Ignorance of our true past is incumbent upon the Greeks, who did not transmit it as they knew it, but disguised it in a curious way under the wrappings of the mind and the ego, made since grow and beautify. Volant nolent, Latin phrase meaning voluntary or not. The Greeks, who had occupied all the screen of the Western culture past, while they were the dunces. The Celts and Egyptians spoke sacred languages, not written for the Celts, written in code for the Egyptians, which confused our etymologists and blurred the memory of the past. The fault lies not with the Greeks, but with the priests and teachers who have brought them to the skies. While Pythagoras pretended to invent the famous theorem, they were still in the Celtic country or in Egypt, initiates who knew everything I told you in these pages. It was found at a time, but the Greeks spoke above. They wrote a lot. They were believed on their word. Neither the Celts nor the Egyptians loved poetry or elocution contests in Greek fashion. Their ceremonies were initiatory. They did not train intellectuals, but enlightened seers, magi, authentic discoverers. We have forgotten them. It is the law of Kali Yuga. The truth is that the Greeks had access to texts now missing in the voluntary fire in the Alexandria Library of Egypt and in many other auto de fe, which reduced to that all the more ancient sources. This is why archaeologists will always find evidence of so-called Greek inventions much earlier. They existed long before the unscrupulous Greek scholars attributed them. The truth is that all the knowledge was given to us by the ancient astronauts, the gods before, the visitors of the stars who terraformed the planet, made this humanity, ours, the fifth of its kind. Suddenly, when Dr. Mayer marvels at the gifts of pre-science of ancient Greeks, I feel that it is paying our head, or his or hers. Quote, the ancient Greeks created the foundations of modern civilization, she wrote. She is mistaken. I have shown in the articles cited in the connection. The foundations of all civilizations and all planetary cultures have a unique source, much older than Greece, than the Celts, than Egypt, than Sumer, than China, and so on. This source is Deus ex machina, the God in the machine, a ghost in the mechanics, a magic wand without which our distant ancestors would have continued to eat bananas all naked on the beach, what they would have done better, probably. All these brilliant inventions that the Greeks have pretended to imagine, no doubt, they are very real. Supersonic planes have crisscrossed the skies of all the continents long before the foolish tests of Daedalus and Icarus. Flying machines and war machines roamed the battlefields long before Leonardo da Vinci drew them. Some of these machines crashed, which is good because they are sewing technological nano objects. Evidence of what I say is so rare or so called. We did not invent anything, not even today. We are content to let our unconscious dig into the Akashic annals, the inventions of the past that our world has forgotten. The first to find something new is the inventor, but who could pretend to invent something new in a world so old that vertigo seizes us? So think, the first traces of technology are nuclear. They are billions of years old. China amuses me with its 5,000 years of history. Really? Not enough to flirt or throw firecrackers. The astronauts who shaped this world and created the human beings belong to a civilization so ancient that we have no chance of catching them. Neither an archaeologist nor a paleontologist herself, Dr. Adrienne Mayer, has nonetheless done some digging deep into the past and found literary and artistic clues, and not a few huge fossils, that seem to explain the inspiration for many of the giants, monsters, and other strange creatures in the mythology of antiquity. I've discovered that if you take all the places of Greek myths, those specific locales turn out to be abundant fossil sites. This is what Miss Mayer, a classical folklorist and independent scholar, said in an interview. But there is, she says, also a lot of natural knowledge embedded in those myths, showing that Greek perceptions about fossils were pretty amazing for pre-scientific people. The Homeric legend of Hercules rescuing Hesione by slaying the monster of Troy, for example, may have a paleontological origin. Mrs. Mayer pointed out that in the earliest known illustration of the Hercules legend, painted on a Corinthian vase, the monster's skull closely matched that of an extinct giraffe. Such fossils are plentiful on the Greek islands and western coast of Turkey, and are mentioned in classical literature. The vase painting from the 6th century BC, Miss Mayer concluded, is most likely, quote, the earliest artistic record of a vertebrate fossil discovery, end quote. She wrote, just as a fossil is petrified time, so is an ancient artifact or text. The tasks of paleontologists and classical historians and archaeologists are remarkably similar: to excavate, decipher, and bring to life the tantalizing remnants of a time we will never see. This is what she said. The first myth showed that the perceptive ancients were able to relate a fossil specimen to living animals well before modern paleontology. Mayer neglects another hypothesis, less flattering to the Greek genius. At the time when this vase was painted, who tells us that other representations of this giraffe much older did not exist? Of course, we did not find them, but we found very little artifact of Greco-Latin antiquity. In my opinion, she's mistaken in her conclusions because she remains a real or simulated prisoner of the dominant paradigm that there was no civilization developed in our distant past, still less civilization more developed than ours, and even less a civilization of giants from distant stars. For the dominant model, it's science fiction. Well, I say that science fiction is right, that Homeric fantasy is much less delusional than the paleontological rantings on Cro-Magnon's man and his zebu skin breeches. Scientists have many lessons to learn from poets and artists, who are by definition greater visionaries. Moreover, when a scientist shows imagination, even the ignorant revere him, as was the case during his lifetime for Albert Einstein and long after his death for Nikola Tesla. To go further than Mayer, fortunately, there is this. The Egan Saga would have given a lot to know a site like this, take my word. And this is by Xavier Séguin, Ancient Robots, Ancient Technology, Creative Commons. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events. events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.